Cinco Paul, creator of Schmigadoon and a Grammy nominee for Schmigadoon as well. I read in another interview that you had the general idea for the series like 25 years ago. Why was this the right time for the show to come together, I guess, after 25 years?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was several things. I had spent a lot of time in the animation world. And, we had these overall deals, we were exclusive. So I was really just focused on that. So that's a big reason it was set on the shelf for so long. But also the TV landscape has changed even in the last 5 years, but let alone the last 25 years. And so there was room for a show as weird as this, quote unquote big swing that, we heard after several of our pitch meetings. This is too big of a swing for us. But fortunately, Apple was there and it wasn't too big of a swing for them.
When you heard that kind of feedback, did you ever go, were you ever like, I should take a smaller swing with this or like do the same thing? Or no, you're always like full board on this concept?
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I don't think there's any way to turn it into a bunt or whatever the baseball terminology would be.
That works. Yeah.
It is what it is. And so, and I had a feeling at some of the places we went that like, this is not going to land here, but fortunately Apple was looking for a musical.
So you wrote all the songs for Schmigadoon, obviously, and they have to recall like, a specific sense of like a classic musical or musical theater, but not parody necessarily those songs. So I found that really fascinating because it seems incredibly tricky. And I guess, how did you kind of think about that? And were you ever like, oh, this is a great tune and melody, and oh wait, I'm actually just now thinking of something else that already exists? Like, how did you kind of balance that from a songwriting perspective?
Yeah, I mean, there were conversations with the legal department occasionally. But a lot of it was just, I love these musicals so much, as you can imagine. But also, I sat down at the piano and played through all the scores of all these shows just so I could get them in my bones. And occasionally, there are some very specific references, but I think some of the best songs in the shows are the ones that you're like, I'm not sure what that's referencing, but it feels right, and that was, there's a mix. Some there's a Do Re Mi parody that's very clearly a parody, but for the most part, it was trying to like get the vibe of it, and also I studied the lyrics. Oscar Hammerstein's, we're firmly in Rodgers and Hammerstein for most of the show, and so studying those lyrics and seeing what tendencies were, and those sort of things.
At the risk of asking you to pick a favorite, what's your favorite one of the songs that you got to write?
Oh boy, that's really hard. I mean, one of the ones that brings me joy every time I watch it is the song "With All of Your Heart," that Ariana DeBose performs with a bunch of tap dancing kids. And very early on, I knew I wanted to sing with tap dancing kids, and this just turned out to be as magical as I'd hoped it'd be. And that's one of those songs that doesn't have an exact corollary, but it's kind of a mashup of a bunch of different ideas.
I read you also had the cast singing live on set. Obviously, you have all these incredibly talented singers and Broadway stars and Oscar winners and Ariana DeBose, future Oscar winners. It's incredible wealth of talent. But why was singing on set so important, I guess, for this show?
I mean, personally, I hate lip syncing. I see it whenever I see in a movie or a show they're talking and then they sing and suddenly it's like, wow, the quality really went up. Suddenly, I hate that. It sounds like they're in the studio, and so I felt like the best way to avoid that, let's have them sing live. And when you have Kristen Chenoweth and Jane Krakowski, Aaron Tveit, Ariana DeBose, all these amazing people, you can do that. And really 95% of the like solo or duo singing, because of COVID, ensemble stuff we couldn't do live, but everything else was done live. And they really appreciated that too, because I think it helps them as performers. Like, they can really give a vocal acting performance that's not something that they recorded a month ago, So I think it was really helpful to the show in many ways.
So the show has a romance at the center that is at a crossroads, and then they're kind of like the main characters kind of split off and explore the other avenues. One of the things I was fascinated watching it is, how do you make sure, or how did you think about making sure the alternate suitors, as it were like believable enough as romantic options that the audience would be like, I could see this, but you don't want to make them too enticing that the audience is then pulled away from the central romance. The show does a great job of that, but I would love to know how you thought of it, because I'd imagine it's tricky.
Yeah, I mean, I think the trickiest one is Emma Tate, the character played by Ariana DeBose, and her romance with Josh, played by Keegan-Michael, because that's really the most fleshed out character that a romance. You know, the other ones are tropes, but we get a little deeper into the trope with her character, and so I thought like, oh no, it's like right. I was like, I'm seeing them fall in love, and I'm like believing it. I'm like, oh no, is like she too likable, or you know, and because Ariana just shines, you know, and but that's why we did all these flashbacks, to be honest, you know, because so much of our Cecily and Keegan were separate so much during the season that we really wanted to establish, oh no, this is a real couple that you should root for. You know, they really do love and care about each other. So that was the place where it got the most dangerous, I think. But then also makes it more meaningful when he has to actually tell her, you know what, it's not you, you know, it's Melissa's the one for me.
Yeah. Did you have to do like, I mean, like, is that a thing where you're trial and erroring in the edit and stuff? Or are you like watching it back and like, do you test? How'd you figure out like how far to push it? Like you said, like the Emma and Josh of it versus like, you know, pulling back and, you know, like, cause you don't want to like demonize obviously Emma. She's not like a villain. So like, you can't like just knock her out by being like, well, she stinks, right? Like you gotta keep her like enticing for the audience, but also not too much. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it was playing with it in post sometimes, looking at the edit and but it was also sort of in the writing, you know, as we're shooting and we're discovering things. I just said, okay, maybe we pull back a little bit here or there, you know. But yeah, it was a fine line to walk here and there.
Yeah, no, and it works. So I think that's good. So this is a show, obviously, like I said, you had this in your head for like, you know, 25 years or whatever. Did it end up like, does the end result, did it come out exactly as you had expected, or like how did it change, like seeing it now and like having, you know, obviously making it, like how much did it change from like what you initially expected, I guess?
Well, I mean, early on, and even when we first started pitching, I hadn't thought of it as like, oh, this is 6 episodes or even 8 episodes, you know. I thought like, oh, maybe this could be episodic and every week we're in a different musical, you know. But once Apple signed on and they said, well, we can see, you know, we're thinking of this as a more limited amount of episodes. That's when I really had to dive in and say like, okay, there's a definite end after, you know, we actually wrote 8 episodes and then they pulled it back to 6. And so then I had to do some quick rewriting. But then there was sort of thinking, okay, like what is a story that can be told in these 6 half-hour episodes, you know, it's meaningful. And so that was the biggest change, and thinking about like, you know, what are the characters' arcs going to be, because we have a shorter amount of time to tell the story.
How much did it help having, obviously Barry Sonnenfeld directed all the episodes, how much did it help having him, you know, one director, I guess, as the voice of this with you on it, or like versus like having separate? I guess you can't imagine how he had that great.
Yeah, I mean, that was so great. You know, a first-time showrunner here, and so it was great to have such an experienced director at the helm, you know, and with such a clear visual style, so distinct and so fun and so perfect for the show. I mean, it was helpful in every way. Barry, however, hates musicals. Turns out, found out like first day on the set. By the way, I don't like musicals. I'm like, oh, okay. But that sort of yin and yang kind of worked. He was the Josh to my Melissa throughout the shoot. So that's great.
Funny. And last thing, I guess, obviously, like, you know, it was a very well received. I don't know, you know, season 2, I'm sure people have been asking you about it a lot, or just in general. I can't imagine you could say anything pro or con, but have you thought about season 2 and like what you would want to do if you have another opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, what I can say is that I had always conceived of this show as multiple seasons, and I would love to do a season 2. I have lots of ideas for season 2 that I think fans of the show would be very excited about. So We'll see.
That's great.
Crossed,
Yes. Fingers crossed. I have my fingers and toes crossed. Cinco Paul, creator of Schmigadoon on Apple TV, plus all the episodes are streaming now from season 1. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.